Okay, well, let's see. Can you hear me back there okay? All right, very good. All right, what I want to do is I want to talk to you a little bit about Bible colleges, and then I want to talk to you about Bible colleges and accreditation. Now, again, I'm not necessarily the expert on all of these issues. Some of you may even know more about this than I do. I just happen to be the one who has put this together for today. So let's see how this happens. There's some things that happened to us at our college. We decided that we wanted to pursue accreditation, and so we began to pursue it. And at first it looked like it was impossible. In fact, when I first told my staff, which consisted of a half-time person, that was my full staff, that we were going to go for accreditation, he laughed long and hard. And he had a good time. He had a good time with me for about 3 or 4 months about that, and he'd come into my office and just laugh. And so we had a good time with that. He now is a pastor of a church in Virginia. He's called me several times to apologize for laughing. So, after we got accreditation, before we got accreditation, he didn't. But and he's actually one of our faculty members now, odd as that may seem. But what we do is extremely important. And I know that you know this, otherwise you would not be in this ministry. But I just want to take a moment and think together, if we could, about what it is that we're doing and why it's so important, and why is it important that we do this in a credible way. Okay, there are many reasons for this, but I just want to take a moment and think about it. First of all, I have a friend who used to be the dean of students at a state university in Nebraska, and he did his doctoral work, and he did a study on Christians going to college. And he had 2 daughters. One daughter went to the state university and went through and did very well and came out the other end serving Jesus and doing a great job and going on to her career. Second daughter went through the same state university, came out the other end denying Jesus and didn't want to talk to anybody about the Lord anymore. So he did this research project. I have the research project that I can send to you if you like. But be forewarned, it's about 120 pages of yada, yada, yada with about 3 pages of information you can use. And but it's good. It's good if you're into that kind of thing. So in his dissertation, he did research on Christians going to college. And he came up with this statistic that there's over 300,000 Christians that graduate from high school in the United States, in North America, every year. Of those 300,000, about 250,000 go to state secular universities. And so he did a longitudinal study and followed many of them through the state university. His conclusion is that 52% of them were no longer believers, regardless of what your theology is, that's a separate issue, were no longer believers in Jesus after they finished 4 years of this secular university. Now, that's not my opinion, that's not his opinion, that's a statistical analysis. Now, I understand there are flaws with statistical analysis, you don't have to tell me that. They showed me how to do that in my PhD work, and now in my book, all statistical analysis are suspect. However, there is something here. 52% of them say, nope, I was brought up in a Christian home, served Jesus with my parents, and now I no longer believe in Jesus, don't go to church, don't talk to me about it. 52%. I don't know about you, but I think that's a tragedy of epic proportions. That's one of the reasons why the church in the United States is not doing as well as the church in other countries. We bring people in the front door, but we're shoving them out the back as fast as we can. So, and there are other reasons, I understand that. So I asked him, his name is Steve, I said, so Steve Henderson, yeah. I said, what's the solution? He said, 1 year of Bible college. I didn't prompt him. I didn't tell him who I was. I didn't tell him why I was asking. But that was his response. 1 year of Bible college. You see, I believe that our ministries are extremely important. We need to produce ministers, and we need to produce people for different kinds of ministries, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. However, one of the things that we need to do is that we need to help the believing community have a foundation of serving God. That's part of who we are. Okay, and I believe that it's important that we do that, and we do that with credibility. So we've started a program that's a 1-year program. that young people come to before they go into college. Now, before we were accredited, we did not have a hard time convincing students to come. But we had a hard time convincing parents to let their students come. Okay? Because they said, well, it's a waste of money. And I'm thinking, good grief, did you just hear what I said? 52% of these people in this room are not going to be serving Jesus 4 years from now, and you're talking about money. So, but they were in charge, not me, so I had to, submit to that. And so we went through this process of accreditation. One of the reasons was because we thought it was extremely important that we have credibility with the students, as well as with the parents, as well as with other universities, as well as with other organizations, where our students could go to other places and it would benefit them vocationally as well. Which, by the way, and this is off topic a little bit, please forgive me, there's a movement right now in the education world and in the political world to say that education only has value as it provides vocational outlets. I believe that is false. Education is to train the person, to equip them for life. Okay? And if we only measure it by vocation, then I think it's a piece of it, but if we say that's the whole thing, we're missing a big part of what university and college education is all about. When universities started in the 11th and 12th century, it was only to train and equip people for ministry and to train and equip them for life. It was not necessarily a vocational school. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe that we need to train people so that they can fulfill functions. I understand that, but that's not the only thing that we do. Okay, in fact, and I'm going to do a very dangerous thing amidst a bunch of Bible scholars. I'm going to read a Bible verse. Okay, 2 Timothy 2:15 says this. In the NIV, it says this. It says, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a workman who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly handles the word of truth. Right? King James Version, for those of you who like King James. Equal access opportunity here. Study to show thyself approved unto God. I have trouble with thyself. Thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay? Part of the reason that we exist is because we want to help people fulfill the scriptures, particularly scriptures like this. The word there, the beginning of the word there means, it's spudadzon, that make every effort and make it with haste and zeal and eagerness to present yourself. And this word present means to put at someone's disposal. Okay? Make every effort to put yourself at the disposal of someone, God, to be approved. Now, we all understand that we are approved by the blood of Jesus and our salvation. So what's this talking about? Study to show yourself approved. This word is an interesting word in that it was used for coins. And if you had to make coins, they made them by hand at this particular time. And each coin had to be approved before it was put into circulation. Okay, because some of them would be a little rough. It'd have to be fixed. If they didn't weigh the right amount, they wouldn't put them in circulation. So what's this talking about? Approved, one that's reliable, has stood the test so that they can be put into circulation. Okay? And like I said, used of coins. Not ashamed. Not feeling inferior. Not feeling inadequate. Not feeling embarrassed. Is how you could look at that, is how you could see that word. But able to cut a straight path through difficult terrain in teaching the message. If everything was just tranquilo, normal, happy, all the time, life would be much easier, wouldn't it? But you know what? I don't know about your life, but mine just hasn't been like that. And neither are most people around us. So what we have to be able to do is to cut a straight path with the word in difficult terrain in teaching this message, with the word of truth, the way of reality. You see, okay, let me think about the scripture with me. Zealously prepare yourself to be at God's disposal to the work of cutting a straight path in life by teaching people the truth about reality and its ramifications found in God. See, we are called to be teacher, leader, philosopher, counselor, communications expert, life coach, researcher, sociologist. That's just the beginning. And those are the things that our students are called to be as well. So those are the things that we're called to be. Now the early church, we think, okay, well, Bible college is an early church. What about that? Well, the early church, the leaders that we know of were part of the 10% of the literate population. Only 10% were literate at the time. Even Peter, the fisherman, was part of that 10% literate. All the disciples had been trained in different schools, the temple or synagogue schools to study Scripture. In fact, the title for Jesus, the main title that was used for Jesus in the Gospels was what? Lord. The second most used title for Jesus in the Gospels, his human title, was what? Rabbi, teacher. Why? Because that's what he did. It was like he had this traveling school. And when the gospel needed to go beyond the Jews, who did God choose? Paul. The guy who, he had some trouble in his life. But he went to the best seminary in town, the School of Gamaliel. God had to straighten his life out a little bit, but he did. Okay? In fact, we're told what in Matthew 28? Make disciples. It means enroll them in a school. Okay? And in fact, all we've learned about in the history of the church, some of these great men and women of the church were people like Augustine, who was educated in rhetoric. Martin Luther, who was really Dr. Martin Luther. In fact, little known secret, Martin Luther, he did not study the Scriptures until he went for his doctorate degree in theology. He knew what the right things to say, but he didn't actually study the Scriptures until he went for his doctorate. Calvin went to the University of Paris. Wesley went to the University of Oxford. Calvin also started the Geneva Institute, which was a training center for ministers. Okay, and people would go there, like you ever heard of John Knox? Well, he came through that Geneva Institute with John Calvin. The Puritans, most of them that we know about came from Cambridge. Even the Pentecostal movement started when? 1901. Where? Topeka, Kansas, a Bible college. Okay? And it spread west and went into Azusa Street, and some different things happened from there. And some of the things that we know today come through some of these different movements, the mission eras and things like that. We know from people who have been educated in understanding the Scriptures, communication, cultural anthropology, those kinds of things. This is what John Wesley said. John Wesley told his leaders, he said, buy books and learn from them or get out of the ministry. He had a hard time with subtlety, actually, when you read Wesley's stuff, And in fact, he said this. He said, if you have to, sell your bed, but buy books. Wow. Now, I'm not telling you to sell your bed. Okay? And Wesley would have. Okay? But because he was so passionate about this. He was so passionate about getting people to study, to zealously improve, so that they could be right in cutting a path with the Word of God and showing people reality so they could follow God. That's our job. It's not our job because we applied for it. It's our job because God called us to it. And there's a big difference. Okay? So this is what we have to do. It was important to Wesley. It's important to us. In fact, one of John Wesley's favorite sayings was, we must organize to beat the devil. And he was always doing that. Whitefield, I've read Whitefield's sermons and Wesley's sermons. I like Whitefield's sermons better. He was very bombastic. He was very dramatic. He grew up a single parent, and his mom was an innkeeper. She kept bars. And so he grew up learning to do drama in bars. So he got saved and did drama in his messages and would draw thousands of people. And in the United States, sometimes he would go to cities that had 4,000 and 5,000 people in it, and 20,000 people would show up and listen to him preach without a microphone. Benjamin Franklin even verifies this for us. Okay? He was a great preacher. Wesley was an okay preacher. He was, a little less on the subtlety and a little less on the drama. I've read a lot of Wesley's sermons. But you know what he did? He organized to beat the devil. And today, who do we know about? Who still has a movement going, even though it's got issues? But who still has a movement going? Wesley. What about the Whitefield movement? It's not there. It's not there. Why? He was a great preacher. he didn't do some of the things that were important generationally. I think it's important for us as Bible colleges that we learn, first of all, who we are, our identity. Sometimes I think Bible colleges struggle with identity. But then also learn the destiny, the call of God over our lives, and that we're here generationally. Dr. Wagner spoke very, very effectively last night on finishing well. I believe one of the issues is we must finish well personally, but we also must finish well organizationally. Okay? Now, don't get me wrong. I believe that some organizations are meant to be born and to die. I understand that. But there are others that are meant to be transgenerational. And I'm going to look at a few of these that have been transgenerational. So I want to look at Bible colleges and accreditation real quickly here. Nature of Bible colleges. See, the nature of Bible colleges is, if you look back through the history of the church, through the history of just the recent history in the United States and in Europe, Bible colleges usually are products of spiritual movements. You have this spiritual movement, this movement of the Spirit, God is working, and then Bible colleges are born out of that. Why? Because we want to train people for leadership and to be effective in doing the things that God has put within us. We want to implant that into other people, right? Is that right? Yes, that's right. Okay? So we are products of spiritual movements, but the other aspect of it is that we are also catalysts of spiritual movements. Okay? Topeka, Kansas was a product. Bethel Bible College was a product of the spiritual movement, but it was also the catalyst of the spiritual movement. One of the reasons that all of us are sitting in this room right now is because Charles Parham laid his hands on Agnes Osmond on January 1st, 1901, and she spoke in tongues. Now, regardless of what you think, what really happened there, or what your theology is on that, that spawned something that's produced some of these things that are happening in this room right now. Okay? So we are products of spiritual movement, but we are also catalysts for spiritual movement. And what I want to talk to you about is, we have learned about being products of spiritual movements, and we've talked about that, and we've learned about that, but I also want to talk to us about being catalysts of spiritual movements as well. Because I believe that it's important that we not only live in the now, we live in the future. But this has happened all throughout history. In the church, the early church. You say, well, there were no Bible colleges there. Yes, there were. Okay? There was the School of Antioch. And, they had trouble with fancy names then. Like, for instance, when somebody would write a book on baptism, they called it On Baptism. Okay? I think there's like 18 books on baptism in the first three centuries of the church. If they did a book on marriage, they called it On Marriage. Okay? So the school was called the School of Antioch. They had another school, a competitive school, because they taught a little differently, called the School of Alexandria. And they play a lot into the first 3 or 4 centuries of the church. And they were catalysts of whole movements. The reason that you and I can even deal with some of the things that we call orthodoxy right now had to do with the School of Alexandria. Most of us don't know about that. But it had to do with that. It saved our bacon, so to speak. Excuse me for being colloquial, but it saved us because of the teaching and the people that came from that school, the School of Alexandria. All right, so what about us? Okay, so let's see if I can get this. Oh, see, and there's movements all over the whole world. I mean, we're dealing with Bible colleges in Romania, in Brazil. There's movements all over the whole world. And so we've got to learn not only to be products, but catalysts. Okay, so let's take a moment and look at some of these, okay? In the past, 1876, this is some of the early North American Bible college experiments. Normal and Theological School of Selma. Selma University, William H. McAlpine was the guy, most of you don't know who that was, had to do with the emancipation from slavery. One of the first schools started from the emancipation from slavery. For the most part, it was an African-American school, started in 1876, called the Normal and Theological School of Selma. Today, it's called Selma University. It is still producing people for the movement in the African-American community, still today. They started in 1876. They say, yeah, but those are old Bible schools, and they're not doing the same things that we're doing. Maybe, but maybe they are. I've run into some people from these kinds of schools. I work with some people from some of these kinds of schools that have stepped into some of the things that you and I have stepped into. There's something happening. Okay? 1882, A guy named A.B. Simpson. Anybody ever heard of A.B. Simpson? Okay. If not, you can come to my church history class one day. But anyway, 1882, he established Nyack Missionary Training Institute that became Nyack College today. And they are still producing, I know the guy who's the dean of one of the graduate programs there, and they are still producing people who are going to countries all over the world. They're sending missionaries into Asia like nobody else that I know, Christian Missionary Alliance. Okay? Why? One of the reasons is because they have Nyack Missionary Training Institute. Nyack was born out of the ministry of A.B. Simpson and carries that spirit, that attitude of A.B. Simpson. What was the attitude of A.B. Simpson? Do anybody know? Get them saved. That was pretty much it. Okay? And so that's what they're doing here. Now, I'm not endorsing that you send people to Nyack, okay? I'm just giving you some examples. 1886, Moody Bible Institute. Anybody know who D.L. Moody was? Okay. If not, then you really need to take a church history class. But, okay, D.L. Moody, 1800s, changed the world with the gospel, started Moody Bible Institute. Moody Bible Institute, still, I think today they have about somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 students. And they are producing people, and the vast majority of them do what? Take the gospel like D.L. Moody did. Not just like him, but that same attitude was there, okay? I know, in fact, I met the president there. I was in a meeting with him. I was teaching in a meeting one time, and I used Moody Bible Institute as an example and found out the president of Moody Bible Institute was in that meeting. So I looked for him, and it was a positive thing I said, though, so we're good. We're good. 1893. School of the Evangelist, Johnson University, a guy named Ashley Johnson, and it's still there today. Johnson University, they came out of the Stone Campbell movement, a movement that you and I would not identify with, but they are still producing ministers of the gospel. In fact, I'm working with a guy out of this movement from Italy who's coming back here who wants to work with our movement. Okay? When I say our, not mine, ours. Okay? And so he just called me on the phone since I've been here this week. Okay, here's a few more, I think. Okay, 1900, God's Bible School. I always thought, who would name a school that? But somebody did and got away with it. 1900, God's Bible School, and now it's called God's Bible School in College. Oh, that's better. But one of the original faculty members there was Oswald Chambers. Anybody ever heard of Oswald Chambers? Yeah. See, and they're still producing people for ministry from that school by the hundreds and thousands. 1911, Toccoa Falls Institute, later on became Toccoa Falls College. A guy named R.A. Forrest, we don't know who that was for the most part, but he was another Christian Missionary Alliance missionary out of the A.B. Simpson's movement, and he started a school in the South. It's in Toccoa Falls, Georgia. And they are producing missionaries. In fact, I've been on their campus, and they probably have more people from Asia than they have from the United States. They bring them over, train them, send them back. I've been in meetings. Now, this is the Christian Missionary Alliance, a denominational school. I've been in meetings with Christian and Missionary Alliance faculty and students that was very similar to the meeting that we just had this morning. And they have this passion for bringing the gospel, particularly to Asia. Okay? It's still working. Now, again, I'm not telling you to send people there. I'm just telling you that they are not only the results of spiritual movements, they are catalysts for spiritual movements, and that's who we are. So because of that, we have to take notice not only of who we are now, but who we are 5, 10, 20 years from now as well. Okay? 1913, Philadelphia Bible Institute. Started with Philadelphia Biblical Institute. Again, a guy started this who we would not identify with, C.I. Schofield. It's Cairn University today, and we do not, for the well, I won't say any more than that. We would not identify with him. However, they are still producing people still today. The guy who is the former president of Philadelphia Bible Institute has been my mentor for very many years in Bible college and accreditation and things like this, and he's 70 plus years old, been doing this for many years, learned from the guy who was at that school before him. So they're still producing spiritual movement. Presently, and I just took a few that these happen to be accredited with ABHE. The organization that we're accredited with is called Association for Biblical Higher Education. Used to be the American Association of Bible Colleges. But they changed the name a few years ago because now they can accredit graduate education. Okay? In other words, with ATS, there's another one, ABHE, that's approved by the Department of Education. And as Dr. Leo mentioned just recently, there are different kinds of accreditation. I wish that we would use different words, but there are different kinds of accreditation. We're stuck with it for some reason. It's embedded itself in our culture. There's accreditors that are recognized by the Department of Education. There's a few of those. And then there are accreditors that are not recognized by anyone in the government, but they do exist and they do a service. And then there are accreditors who are, send me your money and I'll send you a thing in the mail. Okay? So these are, ABHE is the one accrediting organization that's recognized by the United States government to accredit Bible colleges. Now, TRACS can also accredit colleges, but they can do Christian colleges as well as Bible colleges. But ABHE is the one that's recognized to accredit Bible colleges. Now, what that means is...
Let's do this second thing. Read this up for you. I think yours.
Am I losing it there?
No, it's scratching it.
Okay. What that means is that when we get accredited through this group, see, the way accreditation works is peer review, like you do here in ACEA. Well, in peer review in ABHE, they are all passionate believers in Jesus, just like you are. Now, they may not be of your particular theological persuasion, but I'm probably not of your particular theological persuasion either. And yet we can work together. And so the peer review is done by the people who are for you. They want you to fulfill your mission statement. They want you to send missionaries to the end of the world. They understand your vision, your mission, and this is why you want to do that. And once you get accredited, there's some things that begin to happen that have to do with credibility, and I'll go over those in just a moment. But there are two that have just recently come into ABHE that are the results of spiritual movements. Anybody heard of Wayne Cadero? Okay, out of Hawaii, started many churches there. He's got a Bible college called New Hope Christian College. It was accredited in 1995, and Wayne is very involved with the accrediting organization. Okay. 2004, Eternity Bible College. Anybody heard of Francis Chan? Okay. Francis Chan has a Bible college called Eternity Bible College. It was accredited with ABHE in 2004. Okay. These are the results of spiritual movements, but they're continuing to produce and be catalysts for spiritual movements as well. Because all of the things that we're doing, really, the truth of the matter is that it's bigger than us. It should be bigger than us. Okay? It is bigger than us. And so we see some of these, and these guys are going to be producing catalysts for spiritual movements after Wayne Cadero and Francis Chan go on to their reward. Going to still produce it. Okay? Well, how do I know that? Well, I know because I know it worked with D.L. Moody and Moody Bible Institute. I know it worked for A.B. Simpson. Okay? And this is part of who we are and what we do. Okay? Then, us. You put your name in the blank there. I put in Portland Bible College because I know Ken. I remember the name of the college, Dove, Christian International. Those are just the ones I remembered. Sorry. But us. Put your name in the blank there. We are the results of spiritual movements. Whether you're accredited or not, that's not the issue. We are the results of spiritual movements. Now what we need to do is do everything that we can to continue to be catalysts for spiritual movements, even after we and some of the prime movers in our ministries have gone on to their reward. Okay? I mean, we're all going to go on to our reward. I work with Michael Fletcher. He's a key person in the movement that I work with, but he's 50-something. But one day he's going to go on to be with the Lord. But part of what we want to do is build something that will continue to produce, be a catalyst for spiritual movement. Right now, we're reaching into, through students, and actually through training students, we're training Amerindians in Brazil to reach Brazilians. They're also reaching Venezuelans. They're reaching Guyanese. I've been to places that I didn't know exist. I've been to places that I didn't think could exist. I went to this place in Brazil called Agua Fria. It's so far out in the woods, there's no plumbing, there's no electricity, and the reason it's called Agua Fria is because the water is cold. And you have to bathe in the river. Not a positive experience in my book, okay? I mean, but it is way out there in the jungle. And so what we do, we have a choice. Either we can all get together in a room like this and say, okay, yeah, I'll go to Agua Fria and plant churches. Or we can go down and train some students in a Bible college down there, stir their hearts with the passion, the vision that God has given to us, and they can go plant churches. They're much better at it than I am. To them, I look funny. I may look funny to you, but to them, I look really funny. I'm the wrong color, I'm the wrong height, I walk funny, I speak another language. They have a hard time relating to me. They came to me one time, and they said, we want to talk to you. I was in Agua Fria, not my favorite place in the world, but I was in Agua Fria, and they came to me. There were 3 of them sitting in a row, and they said, we want to talk to you. I said, okay. So they spoke in Gadaco and Makushi, in the Amerindian languages, which had to be translated from Makushi into Portuguese, and then from Portuguese into English. So it was a very long conversation, even though there weren't a whole lot of words. And the first lady was the worship leader, and by the way they worship, they gather around the fire, they dance around the fire, and they sing in their language worship songs to Jesus. And the one song I got to sing with them was, they have a hard time with subtlety too. The words to the song is, if you don't believe in Jesus, you will go to hell. And you repeat that over again about 100 times. Yeah, because I start singing it with them. I said, what am I singing? What am I singing? Said, if you don't believe in Jesus, you will go to hell. I go, all right, I'm in. So we danced around the fire, sing that song. It was great. I have a hard time with subtlety. So she said to me, look, we have heard the gospel, and it's a long story. I told Dr. Wagner this story the other day at breakfast about how they came into the things of God in the gospel. Miraculous story. But they said, look, we have heard the gospel. We understand how to walk with Jesus, and we got the gospel, but we don't know how to take it to other villages that are not like us. And we have this word from God to take. We have dreams, they told me, about taking this that you have taught us to other villages. And I'm thinking, thank you, Lord. They're not asking me to go do this. They said, we have 120 young people who will give up their lives to bring the gospel to these other villages if you will come train them. Will you do that? And I said, what does the next person have to say? So the next person says exactly the same thing to me, almost word for word. And I'm thinking, okay. So I finally said, okay, what's the third person say? The third person, same thing, word for word. And I asked my translator, after it kind of goes through all the languages, I asked my translator, I said, do they think that white people are not very bright? He said, no, they think they're cannibals, but they think they're intelligent. Actually, they do. When we first took somebody out of the village, they were praying for him that nobody would eat him because they felt that everybody outside their village was a cannibal. And so we have finally convinced them after several years that that is not true. So I said, why this? They said, that's their way of emphasizing they're very serious about this. And we said yes. And we realized we needed about $200,000 to do it. We took an offering among the 3 of us that were there. We came up with $20, and we were committed to that $20. And so I came home. And through a series of phone calls, a week later, I had somebody send me a check for $210,000. Built the school. We're training people there. Had our first class last year. We're working on reaching 2 unreached people groups this year. But it has to do with the fact that we believe that we're catalysts for spiritual movement. Okay, that's what it has to do with. Okay, so what about Bible college education and training? Why do we do this? Okay, let's just take a few things. First of all, Bible college training and education and training is biblical. It's what we do with them in the here in the United States in Fayetteville, also in Brazil. And by the way, our school in Brazil is not accredited through our accrediting organization, but it is recognized by the federal government of Brazil, which is, a little... the federal government had to recognize it, the state government and the city government. So we went through all this year-long process to get this done. And so we were going to have the governor and the mayor come to our opening event 2 years ago. Well, the governor couldn't come because he was on the lam from the law because the Supreme Court had taken out a warrant for his arrest because he'd stolen money from the Treasury. And the mayor had been photographed the week before drunken on the streets, and he was hiding because people were after him. So politics in Brazil is not the same as it is here. We finally did get those approvals through, but the government's not real stable in that area. But it's also experiential. Part of what we do as Bible college education is experiential. Accreditation does not change that. In fact, accreditation says, yes, we must do this. Okay? And then It is also missional. It's mission focused. All right. So, what about the future? I believe that for the future that biblical higher education needs to be a spiritually robust, culturally relevant, and professionally respected 21st century biblical higher education movement whose contributions to global gospel impact are multiplying in their scale, scope, and significance. I believe that's where we're going. I believe that's where we need to go. ABHE schools, there's a little over 200 of them that are either accredited or in the process, and there's about 45 to 50,000 students in those schools. Now, that's not one school, it's many schools. And we are what they're doing is they're helping each other to become more effective. That really is their goal. That really is their goal. Now, in the process, they're recognized by the DOE, and they do some things to keep those schools recognized by the Department of Education. Culturally relevant, can I just pause here for a moment, and let's think about this a minute. And I say this carefully, and if you disagree with me, that's okay, just don't shout out no, okay, Ken? I think, sometimes we think, oh, well, academics are less important than experience. Now, I believe they're both important and just as important, and I believe in academics, okay? Now, my education started out in non-accredited schools. I was with Abbott Loop Fellowship of Churches, which is very similar to many of the movements here in many different ways. But I believe that academics are important. Academics, as I teach something in our school called socio-rhetorical interpretation, which is a very fine study of the scriptures, looking at the different textures of scripture. I believe that good study of the scripture is spiritually formative. In other words, the better I get at studying scripture, it's good for me because it does spiritual formation in my soul. It changes who I am. It really does. Devotional reading does it, but deep, detailed study does as well. Okay? So I think that what's happened, though, is many of our higher education institutions, like Yale and Harvard, which were initially established for higher education, for pastors and for ministry, it's not the academics that sold them down the river. Again, this is my opinion. But it was what they did about the culture that sold them down the river. They went from countercultural to subcultural to cultural advocates. Okay? Now, I'm not saying contracultural. Contracultural is, we're going to make everybody see it our way. That's contracultural. Countercultural is we live a different way, and we're okay with that. And the message is our lives. A subculture is we live a different way, but we kind of hide and we're a little bit embarrassed about it. But when we become cultural advocates, that's what happened in the Roman Empire. They became cultural advocates, and it's like we're the ones who are pushing the culture. There's a book by a Yale professor, a very boring book, but it has a couple of really exciting pages in it. It talks about how people got converted in the first 3 centuries of the church, and then after that. It said in the first 3 centuries of the church, people were converted through people groups, but after that, it was kind of a social event, and it became a socially acceptable thing, and people came in socially. So the thing that hurt the church after the first 4 centuries was not they became too academic, they changed their position from counter to sub to cultural advocates. Okay, so like I said, you can disagree with me, but so I think that part of what we need to see is that we do need to see that we are doing the best we can to teach people how to be effective in studying the Word. Now what? Okay, what might your school look like in 10 years if you become accredited? Okay, that's the question. And that's an important question. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? That's the question we have to ask ourselves, all of us. And for some this would fit, and for some it won't. And that's okay. Okay? Benefits of accreditation, professional reputation, certification of quality, and more students. I have degrees from non-accredited schools. I have 4 from non-accredited schools, and I have 2 from accredited schools. Okay? And I didn't start my accredited schools until until 2001. All right? So I have all kinds of degrees from all kinds of schools. But you know what? The degrees from my accredited schools have opened some doors for me that some of the other ones didn't. Now, were they better, more effective? In some ways, yes. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Some ways, yeah, it was better. In some ways, no. Okay? But it definitely has opened some doors for me. One of my goals is to get into places like the Ministry of Education in the countries of Venezuela, Guatemala, Honduras, and talk to them about their education systems and get Bible into those places. That's possible. That's doable because of their way of thinking. Okay? I've been invited to talk to some of the governmental leaders in Pakistan. What gets me in the door is the fact that I have a PhD in organizational leadership and I can help them with organizational consulting. Okay? Am I advocating everybody do that? No, I'm just telling you what's happening here. Quality improvement. More than certification, like I was just talking about. One of the things about accreditation is we talk about improvement here, and we want to improve. But accreditation, one of the things that they are keen about is that you're improving, and they want you to prove that you're improving. Okay, because we improve, but the things that we really work on are the things that somebody checks. Okay? Just like if you're a pastor at a church, you say, okay, well, we believe everybody comes to church. Okay, yeah, they probably do. Some don't. But you start checking, and you find out who is and who isn't. I'm not advocating that. I'm just using that as an example. Okay? So they check. Say, are you improving? Oh, yeah, we're improving. How? Well, I don't know. Well, you need to tell me how. They say, and here's one of the requirements, you have to be an institution of integrity. That's what an accreditation requirement. I'll get to those in a minute. You say, oh yeah, and when I first saw that, I say, what do you want me to do? Raise my hand and swear that we tell the truth? They said, no, we want you to prove it. How do you prove that? Well, then you learn the process of proving how you have integrity. There's also a value for the student. Transfer, which again, transfer is always up to the receiving institution. Okay, just because you become accredited doesn't mean everybody will accept your credits. And you're from a Bible college, sometimes they'll hold that against you. Okay, but it's much more likely that they will transfer. Okay.
Just remember you got a form.
Padre. Okay. So resume, it helps on the resume and it helps also with vocational potential, that which I already mentioned. Federal financial aid. Once you get to a certain status, you can develop federal financial aid. Right now we have students that are getting federal financial aid to come to our school, learn about Jesus. We send them to the Philippines. They're preaching the gospel. People are getting saved. Thank you, Jesus. Okay? What did they pay for it? Nothing. What did I get for it? I got the full payment for it from Pell Grants and VA benefits. Measured effectiveness in equipping students. Okay, we say, well, are we effective? We go, oh, yeah, we're effective. Well, the accreditors force you to measure that. Tell me how you're effective. And the other thing is that the accreditors want to know, they'll say, if you say you're 100% good on all the things, we think you're lying. Nobody's 100% good. So find something you're not good at and get better at it. There's no shame in saying, we're not really good at this. Okay, get better at that. And we'll teach you how to get better at that. So measured effectiveness. Accreditation process, whoa, okay. Here's the big picture of the accreditation process. First, you go through applicant status. I'll tell you how to get to that in just a minute. That's the simple part. Then you go through, over a few years, you go through a self-study that has a compliance document to it, an assessment plan, and a strategic plan. Big sounding words, but they're easily broken down. These are administrative functions, but they're also functions inside of your school, talking about things that you're doing in your school. Now, some of the things, when you look through this, you'll look at it and you go, oh, we're not doing that. That's easy. Start. Okay? Start. You say, oh, well, how do we do this? Some of these things look very big and massive. Some of them are, but some of them really aren't. They can be solved rather easily. Okay, and I can tell you which ones are which. There's some that are and some that aren't. Then you get a host team visit, which is 5 people from other Bible colleges who come, look at your school, and go, you know what? You guys are doing really well in these areas. not in these areas, you need to improve in these areas, we think it's okay for you to go on to the next stage. Then you get to what's called candidacy status. Okay? And then you avoid unnecessary delays. That's because you know what you're doing. By the way, if you were to do this, I recommend, now, okay, disclaimer here, I work for a consulting agency that does consulting for Bible colleges getting accredited. Okay? However, and you don't need a consultant to do this. However, I would not want to go through this process without a consultant. That's me not talking as a consultant, that's talking as a Bible college president. Okay, that's how we did it. We went from applicant status to candidacy. They say it takes you 4 to 5 years to do that. We did it in 3 years. They go from candidacy to accredited. They say it takes 4 to 5 years. We did it in 2 years. Okay. So, but we did it because we had consultants. Then you come before the commission on accreditation, and you tell them who you are and what you're working on, and they either say yes or no. Again, remember, they're believers, but they want you to really be who you say you are. Okay? There are external measures and there are internal measures. The internal measures are, what is your mission statement, and are you fulfilling your mission statement? Something we already want to know. The external measures are you people of integrity? Do you have a mission statement? Those are external kind of things. So then you go to candidate status. Then another 4 to 5 years, you go through the same process, and you get to accredited status. Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Listen to me. There's good news and bad news here. The good news is, the bad news is, it's a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. The good news is, it looks more formidable than it really is. Okay, and I could bring my admin assistant who's now a pastor here, and he could tell you he thought that I was doing drugs. He really did. I think he told me that one time, that if he thought we could get accredited. But he's changed his mind. Okay, so become an applicant. I'm just going to give you a few things that you have to have. There's 22 conditions of eligibility. And basically, these are things that a lot of you already do. Okay? These are things that we already do. And, these are internal things. Do you have authorization from your state, which our sister talked about the other day, which some states are a little slippery than others. That's another story, though. Do you have a mission statement? By the way, if you don't have a mission statement, whether you get accredited or not, please get a mission statement. Governance. Do you have a board? Does it have authority? Do you have a chief executive officer? Do you have somebody that runs the thing? Do you have academic patterns? Do you have programs that you run? Do you have a catalog? Do you have a library and learning resources? Oh, by the way, let me tell you a secret. If you're an unaccredited school and you want accredited schools to receive your credits, there's a few things that you can do to help yourself. Okay? 1, have a catalog. 2, have syllabi with your classes. If you don't have those 2 things, they're not even going to consider you. And 3, have a transcript. Be able to give a transcript. If you can do those 3 things, you're halfway there. Okay, and then the other half is a little muddier, but you're halfway there. Do you have a library and learning resources? Accrediting agencies tend to be real stuck on hard books, even though they are starting to come the way of everybody else and looking to online and web resources as an effective solution. Faculty qualifications, this is one that's probably going to be difficult for some of you if you go this route, because faculty qualifications, they must have a master's degree from an accredited institution. Now, there are ways to work with that, but that's one of them that's going to hinder you in the long run. But we could talk about that later. Admissions policy, do you have one? Student body, do you have one? These are biblical theological studies. Do you have those? If you don't, please get them. General studies. Do you have general studies in your school? You go, oh, no, we don't do that. Well, listen, cultural anthropology is a sociology class. Okay? Now, we teach missionaries how to be missionaries, but it's a sociology class. Greek is a language class. Do you have a Christian service program? Because they want you to be able to say, yes, we do practical expression as well as academic expression. They're concerned about that. Program completion. Do you have anybody yet that's completed your program? Institutional stability. Have you been doing this for a little while? What kind of things can you show us that show that maybe you'll exist 6 months from now? Potential for growth and development. What is your sphere of influence like, and Is there potential for more to come in? Financial base. This is one that you may have a little trouble with as well, because running a accredited institution, running a Bible college long term is a financial issue. You need money, and they want to see that you have some, at least, strategies for bringing that money in. Income allocation. Do you have a budget? Or do you just kind of, if it's there, spend it? No, you need to have a budget. Do you have an annual audit? Most of you don't have that, but again, that's not hard to get. Agency disclosure. In other words, just tell the truth in your documents. If you're affiliated with ACEA, that's fine to say that. Don't say, though, I'm accredited by ACEA, because that's not what ACEA says. Okay? Compliance. Are you willing to comply with these standards that we've just given to you? And public disclosure. There are certain things that you need to disclose about your school, like how many graduates and graduation rates, things like that. Okay, so the question is, where do you want to go from there?
About 20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes. All right. I'm going to go through these quickly. Timeline for accreditation. First, you go to applicant status. And these are the things, this is the process in applicant status that I just went over with you from the chart. This is just listed out instead of on the chart. Annual visits, reports, responses. Okay, and then you give a self-study. Your self-study is 3 sets of documents with appendices. It's about 1,000 pages of documents. Listen, there are some difficult parts to this. One of it is assessment and planning. You know, when you assess yourself in ways that you're probably not used to, and planning in ways that you're probably not used to, you have to develop that. The other way is in developing a strong financial base, and they will help you do that. And the other thing is it's more administrative work. So will this cost you money? Yes. Okay, your fees, when you become accredited, it's going to be about $2,500 a year to $3,000 a year in fees, just send to the commission. It's going to cost you money in increased administration. You're going to need probably a liaison with the administration. We have a 16-hour-a-week accreditation liaison. And when we're in accreditation mode, she's in charge. I tell everybody, look, I'm not the boss for these 2 months. She's the boss. Do whatever she says. And she runs it like a drill sergeant. And I mean, she's short, little, and not very loud, but when she says do, everybody salutes and does it. She really does run it like a drill sergeant. But you have to have somebody like that. And so those are the areas that it's going to cost you. Then you repeat to go to accreditation. So what you have to do is look over the wall. Where does this go for the future? The good news is that most benefits begin at candidacy. Pell Grants, federal aid, transferability, those kinds of things. Even impact on student recruiting. We got accredited in February 2012. In August 2012, our enrollment increased by 46%. We won the award from ABHE for the fastest growing school in our size category. Okay, but because it had impact on student recruitment, which does what? It increases your sphere of influence. And you can, with wind in your sails, with money, not a lot of money, but with some money, do that in 3 years. Okay. Components of the study: compliance document, assessment plan, 5-year plan. Now, if we had a little longer, I would go in and explain to you what all these are, but I just want to briefly give you mainly the ones in the assessment, in the compliance document, because these are the ones that you need to think through before you even start. Are these things we want to deal with? One is mission, goals, and objectives. That one's, in fact, this is an area where Bible colleges can excel, okay? When we had our first site visit, the guy who was in charge of the site visit, the chairman of the site visit team, he closed the door, came in my office. He said, did you know that your faculty members, your students, your administrators, they all know what the mission statement is and how you're fulfilling it and who's doing what with that mission statement? I said, yeah, I knew that. I said, I thought that's what you wanted us to do. He says, it is, but I never run into anybody that actually did it before. And I thought, hallelujah. But see, that's us. That's not just me, that's all of us. Okay, we excel in that area, okay? And you do too. Student learning, institutional effectiveness and planning. This is the one that's going to give you a little bit of difficulty. You have to assess and then plan how, in other words, you assess what you're doing, find the weak areas, make a plan for fixing that. And this is kind of a assessment cycle using SWOT analysis and using a 5-year plan and things like that. It's very detailed. It's not difficult, but very detailed and time-consuming. Institutional integrity. Do you have integrity? And one of the ways they do that is by the fact that you have handbooks and that you follow your handbooks. Okay? Authority and governance. Do you have a board? Does your board know what it's doing? Does the board know that it's supposed to help with fundraising? Does the board know that it's supposed to help with governance? Administration. Do you have administrators? Do you have enough? Okay? Institutional resources. That has to do with your technology, your funding, your buildings. Do you have enough? Now, we don't own a building, and that's okay. Accreditation used to check how many bathrooms you had in the building and measure that as part of quality education. Good grief, give me a break. Okay? They've taken that part out, thank you, Lord. Now, instead of descriptive, they're prescriptive. In other words, they want you to provide quality education and prove that you're doing it. They're not going to tell you how to do it. That's the good news. And by the way, even with accreditation, they have never once said, you can't teach this, you can't do this. We've done some wild, innovative, creative things, and they just they don't even blink. Just go, yeah, okay. Okay? Because they want us to prove that people are learning. As long as we can prove that, they're good. Student services, do you provide student services like counseling people about how to get to the program properly, things like that? Do you have a faculty? Does your faculty have the right credentials? Do you have a library? When we first started, our library was a box of books. Okay? It's no longer that, but that's where we started. Academic programs, do you have real academic programs? Do you have a program of study? Is there a beginning? Is there an end? Do people know how to get through it? Okay? The assessment plan, I'm not going to go over that because we just ran out of time. 5-year plan, not going to go over that. We just ran out of time. Oops. But okay, here's the big picture. It has to do with your mission and their standards. Your mission, their standards. Your mission, are you fulfilling your mission? If you don't like your mission, change it. Okay? And standards. You put them in these 2 documents. Then you look for issues, strengths and weaknesses. Then you talk about the vision for the future of where you want to go, opportunities and threats. You make this planning document. Then you evaluate it. Are you doing it? Make adjustments, and then do it again the next year. Massive administrative process. However, it's very doable. Okay? There are roadblocks, but we won't talk about that now. What happens now? Well, the roadblocks are, the roadblocks are faculty, qualifications, library, financial base. Those are the roadblocks. Everything else, all the others, everybody in this room could solve. Those are the 3 that are going to give you difficulty. Okay, what happens now? Decisions about direction for your school, affiliate, accreditation. Oh, by the way, ABHE has an affiliate status where if you just do a few, just kind of had a catalog and some students and things like that, you can become an affiliate. That means you're not accredited, but you get to hang out with the guys who are and learn from them about how they do certain things. And believe me, they've been doing this for a long time. They have some good wisdom on how to equip students to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. At the last at our accreditation conferences, we worship the Lord. The last one, we were celebrating all and remembering, taking time to remember all of the people who come through Bible colleges and become martyrs on the mission field because so many missionaries had come through the Bible colleges. Okay? Accreditation, questions about how to go through the process. We talked about that a little bit. Is this for you and your team? That's the question that only you can answer. Your apostolic stream. And listen, I believe that there are good days ahead for our movements and our movement overall throughout the Bible College. You see, I believe that part of what we do is that we have to organize to beat the devil. We have to strategize. We need to be the deep thinkers. We need to be the innovators. And accreditors are okay with innovation. We need to be the innovators. We need to move our cultures from a partnership culture, which is okay, to an innovation culture. That we are creating new ways to take this gospel to the ends of the earth. And you know what? It almost makes me ill sometimes because what we've done is we've taken the leadership models of the world and slapped the Bible over the top of them and then taught them as leadership.
You might want to give some time for questions.
I believe that it's time for us to find a true biblical model for leadership and begin to train people like that so that the world starts following us instead of us following the world. I believe there are good days ahead. Romans 16:20 says the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. I love that. And I think it's true. I think it's us. Okay, questions? Or comments, yeah.
Please repeat them for the video.
Okay, we have 10 minutes.
Stephen.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, the state of Delaware doesn't allow us to basically get accredited. How do we get around it? Do we set up a organization in a neighboring state like Pennsylvania? We have to talk about that. To go around that situation? Or,
One of the
Delaware is one of the toughest.
Okay, Delaware. Delaware is yeah, okay. The question is, what about Delaware? Delaware does not allow us to be a Bible college. Okay, one of the things that you can do, accredited. One of the things you have to do is ask why, okay, and get the details about it, because every state in the union has a way to work with accrediting agencies, okay? And so what you would need to do is get involved with the accrediting agency and explain to them the details and ask them, how do I do this? And I can assure you that they have dealt with the state of Delaware before. Now, they may not be fond of dealing with the state of Delaware, but they will deal with the state of Delaware. Pennsylvania is another one that has some difficulties, but we have Bible colleges in Pennsylvania that have been accredited and are recognized. And a lot of times when you get involved with a DOE recognized accrediting agency, the states, they don't give you a carte blanche, but they take a little bit different attitude than if you're just approaching them as an individual. Because there are 50,000 students in these schools and all these schools all over the country, and they do have a relationship with the U.S. Department of Education. See, the state of Delaware, their charge by the U.S. legislature is to make sure that people like us don't rip people off. Okay? That's it. They assume that every school... Oh, okay. Does the accrediting organization assume that every school will be owned or run by a board? The short answer to that is yes. Okay, they assume there's going to be a nonprofit of some sort and have some sort of board of governance, even though it can be interlinked with, when we first started, our board was interlinked with our movement of churches. And it was a board, but it was, not just for the college. And what we did is we made it into a separate college board. Did they assume that? Yes. Are there other options? I don't think so.
The reason I ask that is because we're in the apostolic movement. Sometimes we have our schools led by apostles, individuals, and not by boards.
Right, and what they would ask is that those apostles that they could run their schools, but that those apostles would become like a chairman of a board and have a couple people on a board, is what they would ask. Now, again, I can't speak for them, but that's what I think they would ask. The question is, can you become an affiliate?
The question would be which organizations, did you mention any organization that you can be affiliated, or you didn't mention?
I didn't mention the names of any organizations. One you can be an affiliate with, I think it is ABHE. I know you can. It costs $750 a year. ABHE. ABHE. Actually, it does what I'm describing, presupposed resident students. No. They have they have an ability, ABHE, to fully accredit full distance ed or online programs. And so it does not presuppose residence any longer. 10 years ago it did. No longer it does. One of the things that we've done is that we use, and they've not given us a hard time about it, is, with some of the financial end, is that we have a librarian that works a few hours a week, and then we have some volunteer librarians, and it has cost us more in money as far as hiring staff, but it's not been extreme, because we've been able to negotiate with them, and this is how we need to do it, and they go, okay. They have some small schools like Alaska Bible College, something like that. It has like 20 students, something like that, and then they've been able to work with them on it. And as far as the apostolic leader, one of the key person in the Bible college, in their mind, is the president of the college. Yeah. So whoever that president is, I pretty much run the college. I have a board, and they do authority and governance, but when I go tell them, okay, this is what we need to do, it's like, that's what we do. unless they have some kind of overriding reason, or or I'm taking money and moving to the Bahamas, which I'd probably go to Florida, not the Bahamas. But unless something like that happens, it's kind of we're tracking along. If it's according, if they just transfer credits, then the Christian universities like Columbia International, Regent, Liberty, people like that, they no questions. Okay, with some of the state universities, we may have to work with them. They don't always transfer it into the state universities, but actually, there are state universities who won't transfer in from other state universities. It's just a whole. I found that it's a lot of times it has to do with what kind of day the registrar is having, and how much money. That's true. To each one of us, we have to decide: is this for you, your team, and your apostolic stream? Also, I have a book, Peter on Leadership, not Peter Wagner, First Peter out of the Scriptures, and it's free. I have some on the back table. If there's any more left, you're welcome to take one.